Hey, what's up, YouTube? Okay, today we're going to rebuild another toilet, but this is like your average toilet that's going to take like a universal fill valve. This is the toilet here. This happens to be a Kohler, but it could be any two-piece toilet. In other words, there's a tank and a bowl is separate. It's not a one-piece, it's a two-piece. Tools we're going to need and supplies we're going to need is one is the fill valve. Number two is the flapper or flush valve. This toilet actually takes this one. It's specific, but it could be any type of universal flapper. If you have any questions about which flapper to use, take the old one out and bring it to the plumbing supply or home center and ask the person there to match you up with the correct flapper. You're going to need a little all-purpose cleaning solution. We're going to need some type of adjustable wrench, a pair of needle nose pliers. The wrench is to take off the supply line. The needle nose pliers is to bend the clip on the flapper where it hooks up to the flush handle, if needed. This one has the type of clip that doesn't need to be bent, and this one has the type of clip that does need to be bent. I'll show you that later. You're going to need a pair of nippers to cut the tube. We're going to need adjustable spanner, adjustable wrench. Going to need a sponge to help you empty out the tank, or a bucket to catch the water in to help you empty out the tank. So let's get going on this guy. The first thing we're going to do, let me show you what the problem with this toilet is. Okay, so we're going to take the lid off carefully. We don't want to break the lid. It's big trouble. They are available used on the internet with a Google search. Used toilet lids, but they're expensive. Okay, so this toilet is actually filling up too much. The water is right up to the top of the overflow tube, and you can see the float on the fill valve is actually submerged. So this fill valve is defective. It's letting the water fill up too much. This is not only going to waste water, but could also fill up your septic system, your cesspool, and cause a flood in the house or wherever, in your basement, whatever. Big trouble. This needs to be addressed right away. So what we're going to do is the fill valve is actually the defective part. We're going to replace that with a new supply line underneath. The supply line is the pipe from the tank, from the shutoff valve to the bottom of the tank. Supply line, we're going to replace that. But we're also going to replace the flapper as long as we're in here. And the flapper is that guy down there. We're going to replace the flapper, so this toilet will be done. We won't have to worry about it for like 5 to 7 years. Generally, they say these pieces last 5 to 7 years. So the first thing we're going to do is shut the shutoff valve, and we're going to turn it clockwise until it stops, and hopefully the shutoff valve holds and it doesn't dribble. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to flush it, but we're going to hold it because we want to get as much water out of this tank as possible, right down to the top of the flush valve there. So I'm holding it up, I'm holding that flapper up, we're getting every drop of water that wants to come out. Whatever water is left in that tank, we're either going to sponge out or we're going to catch it with a bucket when we remove this fill valve, and it's going to drain the tank. And I use the sponge to get the last drops of water out. While I'm getting the last drops of water out, I'm also cleaning up in there. Use a little all-purpose cleaner, and I want to clean this overflow tube. I want to clean the inside of the ceramic tank. I just want to make it look clean. Maybe clean the spider webs behind the wall joint, wherever you're going to be able to clean. At this point, where you don't normally clean, it's a good idea to clean it. So next thing we're going to do is pop this flapper off. So I'm going to reach in here. This is a hard plastic flapper, and it kind of pops up and off. So here we go. That guy's off. You see it's a hard plastic flapper with these clips that clip on those ears on the overflow tube down there. And then we're going to want to get it off the flush arm here. This is the type that you need the needle nose to maybe open it up a little bit. And also, after we install it, you're going to want to crimp this closed with the needle nose. So, flapper is out. The next thing we're going to do is come down underneath with our adjustable channel lock pliers. And we're going to loosen up this supply line nut. Usually just like a half a turn loose. And then you could reach in here with your hand and get the rest of it. And then I'm also there's another nut there that holds the that fill valve in. Again, I'm going to put these adjustable channel locks on there. And I'm going to crack it half a turn. And then usually I can get in there with my fingers and loosen it up. So that's off. Any water that drips off at this point, we can catch with a rag on the floor. Now our fill valve is ready to remove. You can see it's loosened up and ready to come out, but the tube is still attached to the overflow. So carefully, so we don't break the plastic, we're going to back and forth just work this off of here. It's got a little clip on it that maybe we're going to use those needle nose and get in there. And just bend it. Okay. So here's our defective fill valve. Shake it and get a little bit of excess water out of it. We're going to set this aside for reference because the length on these is adjustable with this clip here. So we're going to use this old one as a reference. We're going to match our new one up to it. And the way it's adjustable is this clip slides up. I'll show you when I got two hands. But that clip slides up and you could extend this out to whatever length you need and then slide the clip back down. So we're going to set this aside right now. And we're going to take a look in there. I like to clean up the seat on this flush valve seat here because a lot of times there's pieces of old rubber and debris that prevent a good seal. So I always like to clean this up with a rag. And while I'm in here, I'm cleaning up this overflow tube, make it look nice. Get the inside, just wipe everything down with your rag. The next thing we're going to do is remove this old metal supply line. Could reuse it. It'll work good on the old one, but I always feel better with a new one because there is a seal here. Sometimes this nut here, sometimes this leaks after you disturb it in replacing the new one. So I always like to put a new one on, especially because this is a plastic shank. And whenever you have a plastic shank on your fill valve, you should always put a flexible supply line in. And what I mean by flexible supply line is something like this, depending on the length. Flexible supply line. Because the metal ones could put stress on the plastic over years, and at any time in the future, you could have a catastrophic leak. So again, a general rule with me is anytime there's a plastic fill valve, I like to put a flexible supply line. Although you could reuse this, it's up to you. I don't recommend it. So using our adjustable wrench, we're going to crack this nut a half a turn. We're going to come in here with our fingers and get the rest off. And there's your supply line off. Going to check this valve is good. It's not dripping or leaking at this point. So that's looking good. Now we're going to open up. We're going to open up our fill valve. And there we go. So one-handed, we're gonna lift that clip up. Now I'm gonna extend this to the length of the old one, using it as a reference. The old one, here's the new one. It's two-handed job, so I'm gonna do that after I put the camera down. Comes in the kit, the new overflow tube, which we're gonna cut to length when we need it. And here's some parts that also in the box. We're gonna need this seal here. Let's see if I set it. So here's the seal, and this is actually a two-piece molded job, and you kind of pop the middle piece out. We're not going to use this little seal at this point because we're going to use a flexible supply line, which already has this in here, but we're going to need this piece, and that slips on the bottom of your overflow tube, of your fill valve. Now we're going to extend this, and if you do happen to pull it out, it's no big deal. You just push it back in. And we're going to compare to the old one to get the right length. I'm looking at this part here. Okay, we want to get the same length. There it is. So we got the same length, and now we're going to lock it in like that. Okay, we got our gasket on here. It's extended to the correct length. We're going to take this guy and we're going to stick it back in that hole in the tank there. And we're going to orient it so that there is no interference with this arm and, let's say, the side of the tank, or let's say the flush handle rod. So We want to orient this so there's no interference with it at all. There's also a little nub over here where I'm pointing that the tube that goes to the overflow. So we want to make sure that that tube is kind of in a position that it's not going to cause any problems when we install the tube. So now that that's correctly oriented, we're going to take this big nut that they give you, and we're going to screw it on the bottom of the fill valve. See if I get you a shot of that. And then we're going to make it like hand tight, and then like another half a turn. The valve the correct way, there's no interference. I'm going to make this hand tight, and then a half a turn. Okay, so that's nice and tight. Now we can put our flexible supply line on. We're going to look for one that's the right length, that it's not going to take any crazy bends. So it's actually, I have a few here, and we're going to look for the right length. That's too long because it would have to take some crazy bends. That's too long, too long. This one here is too short. So I believe I'm actually going to use this 18-inch one. And what I'm going to do is screw it on here, hand tight, and then another half a turn or 3/4 of a turn. I'm going to take the long one and I'm going to loop it behind the bowl. And I'm going to screw it onto our supply valve. And again, finger tight. And then we put our adjustable wrench on it. And we're going to give it another. And what I like to do so I don't twist it is I'm actually going to hold on to the top of the hose with my adjustable channel locks. And then I'm going to give it that half a turn. But see, my hose is starting to twist, so I want to get that back. I want to hold it this time. And I want to give it that half a turn. Okay, so that's nice. We're going to double check this before we're done and make sure there's no leak. We're going to double check up here when we're done, make sure there's no leak. But the supply line is on. I don't like to leave these labels on, so I take them off. I think it gives a more professional look, more finished look. And I've wiped this down. I've cleaned up all back here with my all-purpose cleaner. Come in here with your flush valve, also known as a flapper. Get it down the bottom of the tank there. Get it down the bottom, put it on your seat. And this one we actually click down on the ears carefully. Actually, I'm hung up in the top here. Carefully click down on the ears without breaking the stubs off, one side at a time. Okay, it's clicked on. Now we're going to take that chain and looking for the clip at the end. I'm sorry, I got my finger in the fucking lens there. Okay, looking for that clip at the end. We're going to put it through the handle of our flush valve, of our flush handle. And then I'm going to take my needle nose pliers and I'm going to crimp this closed so it doesn't slip off at some point in the future. This toilet is looking good. We're going to fill it up and test it for proper operation. So I have crimped the little clip so it won't slip off at some point in the future. And I've also checked the length of this chain, that when indeed I do operate the flush handle, that flapper does lift up enough that its buoyancy will lift it clear. And I'm going to double check that before I'm done, and if it's not the right length, I'm going to readjust the length. So at this point, we've double checked everything. We're going to turn the water back on down at the supply line. And we're going to check this toilet for proper operation. While I'm down here, I'm going to double check that there's no leak at the shaft here. And if there is, I'm going to put my wrench on this packing nut, they call it, and give it a quarter turn tighter if there's a leak there. I'm going to check for leaks here by putting a dry finger and rubbing it. If it comes up wet, it's trouble. I'm going to have to tighten that up or do something with that. But this one's not leaking. Again, double and triple checking everywhere for leaks. I'm going to come up here and check this with a dry finger for any leaks. It's looking good. We're going to come up at the top and we're going to wait for the water level to come up, and we're going to check that we're about a half, 3/4 inch down on this overflow tube. This one's actually marked with a line that says water line. We're going to adjust this to get the water line at the proper orientation. Also, you could reach in there, and that clip I showed you before, you could extend or decrease the length of this fill valve to help you orient the water in the proper level if your adjustments are out. Okay, so this guy stopped and it's about 1 inch down. So what I'm going to do is actually, my expertise, I think that's a good level for this toilet. I see no need to bring it up any higher or decrease it any. So we're going to give it a flush, depressing the flush handle, and check that flush valve, that flapper, is indeed working correctly. Very nice, very nice. I'm going to check for any leaks at the joint between the tank and the bowl at this point. Putting a dry hand back there and feeling around. And remember, I cleaned this all up before with the all-purpose cleaner, so it's okay. I'm not going to get grossed out fucking sticking my hand behind the shitter, because I've cleaned everything up, even the floor, everything back there. I've cleaned up all my tools in the work area. I'm going to give the toilet one last wipe down, make it nice and shiny, and this job is done.